Hello, all, Xyceres here. Today we're doing another base tour. It is Waterboro. You can see that here. It is a normal base. It is a small. You'll notice that there's pretty heavy usage of the blocks from the DPD pack, which is what I did for the aesthetics here. It was mostly just to test an idea for a speedrun trap that was low capacity, so it could be used on normal a little bit easier. It ended up getting 94 raid attempts across its life, has a kill ratio of 2.4 with 230 kills overall. It also has a grand total of 96 accolades, which is slightly higher than the 94 raid attempts, so roughly one, of which they were 40 fun, 16 brutal, 23 ingenious, and 19 artistics, making the highest fun and ingenious, which makes sense for something where I'm trying to test a new trap setup. This did come out just before. I did make this base just before the Flamewalker mod came out, but it did come out while it was making its run through. I also believe this was a 750 to start with. But anyway, let's go straight into the run. Welcome back. Okay, so we've just seen the run. The actual trap that the trap setup that I was talking about is actually this shenanigan here with the zigzag path into the warmongers that are set up to block it. It's supposed to be to stop speedrunners. I've seen it used previously on, say, Pontoon Beach. The warmongers in a 1x1 corridor, but you can actually jump over them, which is why I was putting hornets behind them, because that should block the whole corridor. But this was a suggestion for a way to do that differently. And putting like two warmongers here should stop speedrunners, which it kind of works. I didn't get that many like super fast replays for Waterboro, which all comes down to this shenanigan that I'm doing here. This here, you would have noticed, I have this is a Masquerade Hollow Cube. This guard is facing away from the player because they can't, if they face towards the hole, they'll end up aggroing on the player. That's just triggered the Hollow Cube and they won't drop down. And he'll drop down, and he'll drop down to here, look this way, look that way, and then will aggro as appropriate. He has Flamewalker, so that he won't be killed by the fire, and it just means that this area here is really not safe if you don't see this. If you don't see this, don't hear it, run forward, and end up between these two, you will die. Pretty much every time. I've not seen anyone manage to actually survive that. I've got a second wave Hollow Cube. This is where the last Warmonger comes. This is just, if I'm doing a test, I might as well do a full test. This one of these does not work anywhere near as well as two. I think 2 is the correct number for trying to block off a corridor like this. And these ones, I believe, also have short leash. That's to stop you from like coming to here and then backing all the way out, which a few people did try to do. This works pretty well. I think there are some things I've seen that are probably a little bit better now that Flamewalker is out, because the suggestion for this that I'd gotten from someone could be vastly improved by putting Flame Walker on these guys and having them go down a full corridor like this. Though, at that point, you don't have the short leash, so then you can back up and drag the warmongers out of the corridor, which can be a problem. This here is just because it's a relatively blind turner, relatively blind corner, so sometimes you'll catch people with it. This here is both a blind corner that you can get trapped by. It has blockade, so that if you do fall into here, you actually have a very little amount of time to actually deal with this. If you actually fall in here, one of the best ways to deal with this is to grapple onto here and stay there for the full 2 seconds before going up and out. But it's really hard to get the hitbox right so that you don't accidentally tap the end of the spikes and die. I didn't deal with this in the actual run because I knew this was able to be grappled through. No one ever tried to grapple through it. There is an opaque. Even when they'd seen this whole setup, no one made the connection that they can grapple through that and be completely safe and not have to deal with this, even if they were having trouble with this. This here is just a Hunter bolt shot. Because this is opaque, it can actually hit you back here-ish. Once you've triggered it, obviously, you have to trigger it and then move back. This is a hollow cube with a Chaos Bomb trap? Yep, Chaos Bomb trap. Chaos Bombs is just so that they clear the lip of the block a little bit easier, and they basically blow up everything in here. Quite a few people will often take the shortest path, which is over this, into the gen mat. But they're not going to know that they can jump. They're not necessarily going to know that they can or should jump over it. And it just catches a lot of people off guard because of that. On the way out, you just got these as second wave, that as second wave. That's just to make this room fairly dangerous, even if you come up here and shoot these two. If you don't also deal with the bomb trap, you're in trouble. And a lot of people seem to come up here, not notice these at all, come around here and come around the corner, which would work. Could work, I guess, because the bomb traps might bounce. The bombs might bounce down there because they can be pretty unpredictable at times. But by putting the bomb trap there, what ends up happening is people get to here, realize there's a bomb trap, step back, and get killed by these because they've spent too long in that chamber there, which is pretty good. As for decorations, I put a little bit of graffiti back there. I think this looks like an abandoned building. It kind of makes sense. And I'm alternating the patterns, trying to make sure that they don't look like they're really repeated, but they obviously are. But I want the bricks to look like they're in the same pattern. I don't want it to be really obvious that these are repeating patterns, so I've put some of these blocks in different arrangements so that they can actually see different sides, so that there's a bit of a variation there. And you've got this metal railing, I guess, around this chamber, just to make it a little bit bigger, make it a little bit nicer looking. Same thing with these markings down here. This here, I wasn't going to do anything on the wall, so I just decided to go for these blast markings, just trying to make it look like it's grime off the floor, really, and just lighting on here. These white stones don't really work with this red. There's no red brick. And if you put this on a diagonal, you get this roofing that's all over the place, which is not really what I was looking for either. As for the ground itself, this is just a ton of stone just to kind of block it in. When you're watching replays on these and someone's having issues and like trying to find a hole and they're grappling for ages, it just gets boring. It's better once you've got some extra capacity on a normal base. I suggest just getting rid of just blocking that off so that you don't have to deal with it, assuming you can still get to the tombs. Because if you can't get to the tomb, that's a whole other matter. But yeah, this is Waterboro. It's all based around the idea of the diagonal corridors so that they can have less space, so that the warmongers can block them a little bit easier. It seems to work fairly well. It's not super dangerous, so it's only really useful in the situations where they can't back up, similar to like the incinerator corridors. So maybe like the end of a cheap way to end a kill box, or just difficult encounter in general. But anyway, that will be it for this one. It will remain on social until such a time that it'll remain on social until the description says otherwise. For my next one, it's going to be Olamon, which is another brutal map, because I've been messing around with brutals, trying to actually get better at making them. But that will be next week, I believe. Anyway, I shall see you then.